Jánيla Masa, we are very happy to host you with us on the Arabic Post website, which garners plus 20 million monthly visitors from all over the Arab world. It's our honor to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. Uh, what was the first thing you did or felt when you have been chosen to become the first Muslim woman in hijab hosting a program on CBC network?
It was very exciting, but also very nerve-wracking. I feel a lot of pressure to represent my community well, to show that women in hijab, that, our faith isn't at odds with our Canadian identity, but also that we can be, successful parts of our community and of our society. Also I feel a lot of pressure in the sense that I feel often for women like me, being the first, there's no room to fail. You have to be excellent because people are watching, people are looking for any opportunity to say, I don't deserve to be here, or I shouldn't be here, or I'm not a good journalist. So I feel like I have to always be excellent in my job so that I don't have any space for anyone to criticize my work.
Great. Tell us about obstacles that you overcame until you reached your current position.
Yeah, in Canada, we have a lot of rules against discrimination in the workplace. So we can never say to somebody that we won't hire them because of their hijab. So in some ways, that almost made it more difficult because these rules are in place. That doesn't mean that people don't have these ideas and are limited by what they think might be accepted in television news. So I often had to be the one, because it hadn't been done before, I had to be the one to bring up the topic of conversation with the manager or the person who was doing the hiring, to make them feel comfortable so we could talk about maybe some of their reservations or concerns about hiring someone like me on TV. Because for them, it would be taking a risk if they were the first one to do it. They didn't know what the reaction was going to be like. They didn't know if viewers, how they were going to respond. So, but I know that they were also maybe afraid to talk about it or to ask me about it, because they wouldn't want to be accused of discriminating against someone in hijab, since there are laws against that in Canada. So, I had to have many candid conversations with people about it. And in the end, I think people started to realize that, Canadians, for the most part, are able to look past what I've chosen to wear and actually judge me as a journalist and judge me for my work. And so I'm really grateful that that has been the case.
Perfect. You worked for years behind the cameras. What has changed after you moved in front of the camera?
Yeah. So my first on-air job in front of the camera was 6 years ago. And at that time, I was the first and the only woman in hijab on as a television reporter, not just in Canada, but in North America. And I always said I may be the first, but I didn't want to be the last, and I didn't want to be the only one. And I'm really glad to see that, the door opened a little bit behind me, because since then, at least two other women in hijab have been hired on air in different parts of the country, one in Montreal and another in Saskatchewan. She's no longer on air, but she was in 2019. So I'm glad to see that people were able to see, oh, we hired a woman in hijab and the world didn't end and we can continue on and it's fine. So, I'm glad to see more women getting those opportunities, partially also because I feel like it's really important for our newsrooms to reflect our society. With every race, religion, gender, ages, physical abilities, all of these things need to be reflected in our newsrooms, because, newsrooms are a very powerful place. We decide what stories are told, how they're told, what stories are important, whose voices get heard. And unfortunately, in Canada, when you look at newsrooms across the country, it doesn't look as diverse as the country does, right? Canada is one of the most multicultural and diverse countries in the world, but you wouldn't know it if you looked at the media. So I think that we need to do a better job of reflecting our society. It is our responsibility to reflect the society that we are reporting on.
Perfect. You covered a lot of life events and may you have been exposed to racist attitudes and discrimination. What is the most difficult situation you'll never forget and how did you overcome it?
Most of the negative reactions that I get happen online. People are very polite to your face. Most of the time, they aren't racist to your face. Most of it happens online. And, I would get messages like, oh, why don't you go back to Syria? ISIS is hiring. Oh, get this bag lady off my TV. Canada is becoming an Islamist state, these kinds of comments. But most of the time, I realized that most of the comments were purely about my image, about how I look, about how I'm dressed. And none of it had to do with my work or my journalism. So people are attacking me, not because I'm doing a bad job, but because they have a problem with how I'm dressed. And to me, that's their problem. That's not my problem. And I think in general, women, especially in television, we're constantly, scrutinized for how we dress, how we look, our hair, our makeup, our outfit. We're too covered. We're not covered enough. We're smiling too much. We're not smiling enough. Constantly facing criticisms about our appearance that our male colleagues don't deal with. So to me, that's kind of what I see this as, an obsession with women's appearance. And I would love for us to focus on what's in women's heads as opposed to what's on women's heads.
Great. You weren't a Muslim born, but you wore the hijab at a young age. What are the reasons that made you take this decision?
My mom became Muslim when I was about 3 or 4 years old. So I was raised in a Muslim household. And to be honest, when I started to wear a hijab, it was because I was seeing my mom and my sister wearing it. And I didn't want to be left out. So I wanted to wear it too. In fact, my mom didn't want me to wear it because she thought I was too young and I didn't understand. But I was insistent. And so, yes, I wore it from a pretty young age. But as I grew older, then I started to understand its meaning a little bit more. And it was such a huge part of my identity that, if I ever felt like I was going to have to take it off to pursue my career, I don't think that I would have, because I don't know who I would be without it. And I would have had to choose another career.
Have you ever thought in your personal or professional life to change your decision and take the hijab off?
No, like I said, if I was ever faced with that decision, I would have to choose my hijab over my career. But I'm really glad that I didn't have to. And I think that's part of why I continued pursuing and pushing, because these are two very important parts of my life. I love journalism. I love telling stories. And I wanted to be a reporter. And so I was going to try my hardest to achieve that dream. At least I was going to try. Even if it didn't work out, I wanted to know that I at least did my best to try to get there.
To be honest with you, even us in Middle East and some Muslim countries suffering from discrimination sometimes because of our hijab, we might think, do I take off the hijab because it's an obstacle for me to reach some positions? Here,
Yeah.
what is your advice when you have to choose between promotion at work and hijab?
I don't deny that it is a very difficult decision, and I don't hold it against any woman who decides that maybe they need to remove their hijab for whatever reason, whether it's work or personal. It is such a personal choice, and which is why it's so difficult and disappointing for me to hear certain governments or certain jobs deciding what women can or cannot wear. I think that should be a very personal choice. For me, I just kind of had to keep fighting because I didn't want to give up who I was or change who I was for someone else. And that's anyone, whether it's my government or my employer, my father, my husband. For me, I have to make a choice for myself and do what I'm comfortable with and what I believe in. So I hope that no one takes those decisions away from women.
Perfect. Do people ask you about Islam, hijab, fasting Ramadan? Tell us a story that someone emotions stirred when you talked about Islam.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't talk a lot about Islam in my work because I'm here to be a journalist. I just happen to be wearing hijab while I'm doing it. And I know that alone sends a message to people about Muslims, about who we are, what we can do. And it's a very powerful one. Until these days, you know, the only time we see Muslims and women in hijab on TV is in a negative light. And so I'm glad to be able to showing a positive light. I have written a little bit about, you know, Ramadan, but, you know, Canadians are very familiar with it because we share a lot of our celebrations and customs of many different religions throughout the year. So it's not uncommon for people to already know about, you know, some of our celebrations.
Tell us a little about your childhood and your family. How did your mother convert to Islam, and how was your raising after converting to Islam?
My mother became interested in Islam. She was here studying English, and she met some friends in her class from many different backgrounds where she was learning English, and that included some Muslims. And she was interested in learning more about Islam because back home in Panama, there are very few Muslims. It's 99% Catholic. And so it was very foreign and strange to her. But the more she learned and read about it, she realized, oh, it's actually not that different. There's more similarities than there are differences between Christianity and Islam. And that's what she always said, you know, when she became Muslim, that she didn't leave her faith behind. She didn't leave her love of Jesus behind. She was only building upon everything she already knew, all of the prophets that are the same. You know, she was just adding to it and answering some questions that she felt were unanswered in her previous religion.
How do you see the rise of the right, racism, and Islamophobia? Does it affect you personally?
Of course. You know, here in Canada, we had a horrible mass shooting in a mosque in Quebec a few years ago. And that was very scary and very sad to know that the level of hate can rise to that kind of violence. And this is also why it continues to be important for me to do the work that I do, to be so visible in a public space like this, so that Muslims aren't seen as this foreign other entity that's so far removed from Canadian society. I constantly am showing people that I'm Canadian and I'm Muslim, and those two things can coexist. So yes, there is a rise in Islamophobia and racism. We know even in Canada that extremist far-right groups are very active in parts of Canada and actively recruiting. And we also see even in some of our government's laws. In Quebec, in recent years, they passed laws against religious symbols in public sector jobs. So certain jobs, teachers, judges, lawyers, you can't wear hijab if you live in Quebec. And that is disappointing to see, that instead of moving towards more representation and acceptance and tolerance, we're moving in the other direction.
Will you think through your program Canada Tonight to highlight culture issues such as refugees and persecuted Muslims in some countries?
Yeah, so Canada Tonight is a current affairs show that is meant to reflect contemporary Canada in all of its diversity. And so we want that to be reflected in the types of stories that we tell, in the people that we choose to come on our show to speak. And, you know, we make a concerted effort to broaden the range of topics and guests that we bring on. As I mentioned, you know, Canadian media, unfortunately, isn't very diverse, both behind the scenes and on air. And so that's something that we are intentionally trying to tackle with our show Canada Tonight and be more reflective of our very diverse country.
Perfect. You don't speak Arabic, but do you have a special message you want to say to the Arab Muslim audience?
Oh, I don't speak Arabic, but I guess I'll say assalamu alaikum to all of your viewers in the Arab world. I appreciate all of your support. I get all of the messages, and thank you so much for supporting my journey.
So can we call you like hijabi Oprah Winfrey?
I guess so, maybe.
Perfect. We have reached the last question. You always repeat your mother's words that you cannot give up your dreams just because no one has achieved them before you. After your success, what are your next plans that you seek to reach?
People always ask me what's next or what's my big goal or my big dream. And it's so hard to think about it because even just getting here seems so impossible and seemed like such a far-fetched dream to have. And so I feel like in some ways I never even allowed myself to dream further and further. And every time I reached a milestone, now I have to say, oh, okay, what's next? So I'm just really trying to get very good at what I'm doing right now, enjoy the moment right now. And I really want to be a mentor to younger people who want to succeed in this field, because it is a very difficult field to succeed in, even when you do have people and mentors that you can look to who look like you. So I want to be able to be a mentor to younger people and to make room for more people who look like me to find success in Canadian media.
You are. I wish you all the best. I'm really pleased to talk to you. Jánila, thank you for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shaima.